The first time my sister told me she wanted her wedding gift back, she did it in front of 32 people. She stood beside her husband, holding a champagne glass in one hand, and pointed at me with the other. You know what, Emily? If you're going to be this cheap, maybe you should give me back the gift. I don't want anything from you anymore. The room went silent. I looked at the woman I had spent 3 years quietly paying thousands of dollars for. Then I smiled. Absolutely. Her face changed, because she thought I was going to beg. She had no idea what I was about to send her. My name is Emily Thorne. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my adult life, I had one deeply annoying habit. I kept score, not because I wanted to, because my family taught me that if I didn't keep track of what I gave, nobody else would. My older sister Amanda had always been the favorite. She was 3 years older than me, effortlessly charming, beautiful in the kind of way that made strangers immediately want to like her, and completely convinced that life owed her a comfortable landing every time she jumped. When we were kids, Mom called Amanda the social one, Dad called her the dreamer, I was the responsible one. At first, I didn't mind. Being responsible sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. In our family, responsible meant I was expected to fix things. Amanda forgot her homework? Emily would remind her. Amanda spent her allowance? Emily would lend her money. Amanda needed a ride? Emily would drive. Amanda forgot to RSVP? Emily would call. Amanda couldn't figure out a bill? Emily would explain it. And whenever I complained, my mother had the same answer. Emily, you're so good at handling things. Don't make this a big deal. So I learned something very young. Being capable meant people expected you to carry them. By 24, I had stopped asking my family for anything. I rented a small apartment, worked in financial operations for a medical technology company, and started saving aggressively. I wasn't rich. I was disciplined. There was a difference. I cooked at home. I didn't buy designer clothes. I drove the same compact car for almost 7 years. I packed lunches. I tracked my spending. I wasn't living some glamorous life. But slowly, quietly, my life became comfortable. And Amanda noticed. She always noticed when someone else became comfortable, especially if she wasn't the one making it happen. Amanda married Daniel when she was 30. Daniel was a nice enough guy. That was the problem. He wasn't particularly ambitious, but he was pleasant, and Amanda could make pleasant people feel like they had discovered the meaning of life simply by agreeing with her. Their wedding was beautiful. Expensive, too. Much more expensive than either of them could realistically afford. Our parents contributed. Daniel's parents contributed. Amanda contributed almost nothing. And then there was me. 3 months before the wedding, Amanda called me. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating leftover pasta while reviewing a spreadsheet. Emily? Yeah? I have a tiny favor. Whenever Amanda said tiny favor, I knew I was in trouble. What is it? You know the venue deposit? Yes? We're short. How short? There was a pause. 8,000. I nearly dropped my fork. Amanda, that's not a tiny favor. I knew you'd say that. Because it's $8,000. You have savings. I stared at my phone. Not because I was surprised, because I was trying to understand how casually she had said it. You know what I'm saving for. At that point, I had been saving for a down payment on a townhouse. Something modest. Something that would finally be mine. I know, she said. So why would you ask? Because it's my wedding. There it was. The sentence that ended every argument. My wedding, my birthday, my graduation, my life. Amanda always had a reason why her wants were more important than mine. I told her I couldn't give her $8,000. She became quiet. Then came the guilt. I just thought you'd want to help your sister. I do. So you don't? That isn't what I said. You always make everything about money. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You called me asking for $8,000. Forget it. Okay. She hung up. For 2 weeks, she barely spoke to me. Then Mom called. You know Amanda is under a lot of pressure. I know. This is supposed to be a happy time. I know. She didn't mean anything by it. I know. Mom sighed. You could help her. I looked at my savings account on my laptop, then at the townhouse listings I'd been browsing. I already gave her $3,000. That isn't the same. No, I said quietly. It's not. Mom didn't understand. Or maybe she did. Maybe that was the part I didn't want to admit. Eventually, I gave Amanda another $2,000. Not because I wanted to, because I was exhausted. $5,000. Gone. I told myself it was the last time. I should have known better. The wedding came and went. It was beautiful. Amanda looked like a princess. I remember standing in the reception hall, watching her dance beneath hanging lights while a photographer captured every angle. I was happy for her. I genuinely was. And then I saw the bill for the hotel room she'd booked for her bridesmaids. She'd charged it to our mother. I almost laughed. That night, Amanda hugged me. You're the best sister. I remember thinking, I wish you knew how much that sentence costs me. 3 years later, Amanda was living in the kind of apartment people described as luxury in real estate brochures. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a rooftop pool, concierge service, underground parking, a gym that looked better than most private clubs, and she wasn't paying the rent. I was. That part requires some explanation. About 6 months after the wedding, Amanda and Daniel's financial situation collapsed. Daniel lost his job. Amanda had never worked consistently. They had credit card debt, car payments, wedding debt. And somehow, none of it was their fault. According to Amanda, they had simply been unlucky. One evening, she showed up at my apartment crying. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked exhausted. Her mascara was running. Emily, I don't know what we're going to do. I made tea. I listened. Daniel had been laid off. They were behind on rent. Their landlord had given them 30 days. I asked how much they owed. She told me. It was bad, but not catastrophic. I said they needed to downsize. Amanda stared at me. We can't. Why? Our neighborhood. I blinked. What about it? We have a reputation. I actually laughed. You're about to lose your apartment. You don't understand. No, Amanda, I understand perfectly. She looked away. Then she said something that changed everything. What if you helped us for a few months? How many? 3. I thought about it. 3 months. Maybe I could help them stabilize. I agreed. I told her I would cover the rent for 3 months. That was it. 3 months. Nothing more. The first month passed. Then the second. Then the third. On the 3rd month, Amanda called me. Can you cover one more? I said yes. Then another. Then another. By the end of the first year, I'd paid 12 months of rent. The second year, 12 more. By the 3rd year, I had stopped thinking of it as temporary. I simply paid. Sometimes I paid the rent directly to the management company. Sometimes I covered utilities. Once, when their car broke down, I paid the repair bill. When Daniel's income finally improved, I assumed they would take over. They didn't. Instead, Amanda told me they needed stability. Then she said something I should have paid more attention to. You don't even notice the money anymore. She was right. I didn't. Not because it wasn't significant. Because I had become accustomed to sacrificing myself for my family. That is how entitlement grows. Not in one giant act, in tiny permissions. $100 here, 1,000 there. One favor becomes a habit becomes an expectation, and eventually, the person receiving your sacrifice forgets that you ever made one. 3 years, 36 months. The apartment cost $3,250 a month. That meant I had paid $117,000 in rent. Add utilities, parking, and several emergency expenses, and I was comfortably above $120,000. And Amanda knew. She knew every penny. Because the payments came from my account. But I never demanded repayment. I never sent an invoice. I never reminded her. I told myself family wasn't supposed to keep score. Then came Amanda's second wedding. Not hers. Her vow renewal. Apparently, after 3 years of marriage, she and Daniel needed a real wedding. This time, she wanted something even bigger. A ballroom, live music, designer flowers, a custom cake, and a dress that cost more than my first car. I wasn't surprised when she asked me to contribute. What surprised me was how much. 10,000, she said. We were sitting in a cafe. She didn't even look embarrassed. $10,000? Yes. No. She frowned. Why? Because I already paid for your apartment for 3 years. Her expression hardened. That isn't the same thing. How? You offered. I stared at her. I offered to help you for 3 months. You never said I had to pay you back. I never said you didn't. She crossed her arms. Wow. That one word carried a surprising amount of accusation. I leaned back. I'm not giving you $10,000. Amanda rolled her eyes. Fine. I knew that tone. The conversation wasn't over. It was simply moving to another person. Mom called me that night. Dad called the next morning. Then Amanda's husband texted me. Even my aunt somehow got involved. Everyone had the same message. Don't ruin Amanda's special day. I almost wanted to scream, but I didn't. I simply stopped responding. And for the first time in my life, I felt something strange. Relief. I had finally said no. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 weeks later, Amanda's vow renewal took place. I attended because Mom begged me. I brought a gift. A very expensive one. It was a custom-made crystal chandelier designed for their dining room. I'd spent $2,800 on it. Why? Because even after everything, I still wanted to be the bigger person. The chandelier was beautiful. Hand-cut crystal, brass detailing, custom installation. It arrived in a massive wooden crate. Amanda opened it in front of everyone. For a moment, she was speechless. Then she smiled. Oh. I remember the exact sound of that word. Oh. Not thank you. Not Emily, this is beautiful. Just, oh. She touched one of the crystals. Then looked at me. Is this real? Yes. How much? Does it matter? She shrugged. I was just wondering. Then she looked at Mom. It's nice. Nice. I swallowed. I'm glad you like it. She didn't. Not really. I learned that later. That evening, the family gathered at Amanda and Daniel's apartment. The champagne was flowing. Music played quietly in the background. The chandelier had already been installed. It looked incredible. I was standing near the kitchen when Amanda walked over. She had been drinking. Not enough to be incoherent. Enough to be reckless. She looked at me. You know what bothers me? I smiled politely. What? You always act like you're so generous. My stomach tightened. What? You heard me. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Amanda. No, I'm serious. She gestured toward the chandelier. This is exactly what I mean. I stared at her. You're complaining about the gift? I'm saying it's flashy. You wanted something expensive. I wanted something thoughtful. It cost nearly $3,000. She laughed. That's not the point. Then what is? She looked around the room. Everyone was watching, and then she said it. "You're cheap, Emily." The words landed harder than they should have. Not because I believed them, because I knew how much I had given. I knew every sacrifice, every late-night transfer, every month I delayed my own plans, every time I had looked at my savings and told myself it was okay. And this woman, standing in an apartment I had paid for, had the audacity to call me cheap. I didn't answer. She continued. "You always do this. You give something, then expect everyone to worship you for it." My face went hot. "I'm not asking anyone to worship me." "Then why bring it up?" "I didn't." "You just did." "I didn't." She pointed at the chandelier. "You probably got it on sale." Someone laughed nervously. I looked around. Nobody met my eyes. And then Amanda said the sentence that finally broke something inside me. "Honestly, if you're going to be this cheap, just take the damn thing back." Silence. "What?" "You heard me." She crossed her arms. "I don't want your gift." My heartbeat slowed. Everything became strangely clear. The room, the music, the clink of a glass somewhere behind me. Daniel looking at the floor. Mom frozen beside the sofa. Amanda staring at me, expecting a fight, expecting tears, expecting me to defend myself. Instead, I smiled. "Okay." She blinked. "What?" "I'll take it back." Her confidence disappeared for half a second. Then she laughed. "Fine." I nodded. "Fine." I walked over to the chandelier. I looked at it one last time. Then I turned to Amanda. "You said you don't want anything from me." "Yes." "Understood." I picked up my coat. Nobody stopped me. Not even Mom. I drove home in silence. The city lights passed across my windshield. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I expected tears. Instead, I felt something colder. Something much more precise. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and for the first time in 3 years, I opened the folder where I'd kept every payment I had made for Amanda and Daniel. I had saved everything. Bank statements, transfer receipts, emails, lease documents, utility payments, parking payments, repair invoices, every single one. I stared at the total. Then I calculated the rent. 3 years, 36 months, $3,250 per month, $117,000. I added utilities, parking, emergency repairs, insurance, miscellaneous expenses. The total came to $123,847.62. I leaned back. For a long time, I simply stared at the number. Then I opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, "Statement of account." My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from realization. I had spent 3 years believing I was helping my sister. She had spent 3 years believing she was entitled to my help. Those were not the same thing. And suddenly, I wanted to know exactly what would happen when she realized that. That night, I didn't send anything. I slept badly. Every few hours, I woke up and checked the document. Part of me felt ridiculous. Who sends their sister an invoice? Another part of me whispered, someone who has finally stopped pretending that exploitation is love. The next morning, I called an attorney, not because I planned to sue my sister. I didn't. I wanted to know where I stood. I explained everything. The attorney listened, then asked one question. "Do you have documentation?" "Yes." "Written agreement?" "No formal repayment agreement." "Then don't call it a legally enforceable debt." That sentence mattered, because I wasn't interested in pretending it was something it wasn't. I wanted the truth, not a threat, not a fake legal document, not intimidation. The attorney helped me understand the difference between an actual debt and a documented history of financial support. Then she said something I never forgot. You don't have to sue someone to make them understand the value of what you gave them. I went home. I opened the document again and changed the title. Not Invoice. Instead, 3-year accounting of financial support. Then I added a note. This document is not a demand for payment. It is a complete record of the financial support I provided after you asked me for temporary assistance. I listed everything, month by month, payment by payment. No insults, no emotion, just facts. At the bottom, I wrote, total, $123,847.62. I stared at the number. Then I smiled. Because Amanda had asked me to take the gift back. So I was going to. But I wasn't going to stop there. I was going to return the chandelier, and I was going to return something else. Her illusion that my generosity had been free. The next afternoon, the chandelier was removed. The installer came with 2 assistants. They carefully packed every crystal into its original protective casing. Amanda wasn't home. I didn't tell her. I didn't need to. When the truck drove away, I stood in the empty dining room. The ceiling looked strangely bare. I felt lighter. Then my phone buzzed. Amanda. Amanda. Are you seriously taking it back? I looked at the message. Another appeared. Amanda, you're unbelievable. Then, Amanda. I knew you were petty. Then, Amanda. Mom says you're overreacting. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, Amanda. Fine. Keep your stupid chandelier. I typed 1 sentence. Emily, you told me you didn't want it. I sent it. She called immediately. I let it ring. Again. Again. Then the messages started. Amanda, you are making a huge mistake. Amanda, you don't embarrass me like this. Amanda, you owe me an apology. I almost laughed. I owed her an apology for taking back the gift she had demanded I take back. That was when I understood something. Amanda didn't want the chandelier. She wanted control. And for the first time in our entire lives, I had taken it away. I didn't know yet how far she would go to get it back. But I was about to find out. By the end of the week, the family had divided itself into 2 camps. The first camp consisted of people who thought I was cruel. The second consisted of people who were suddenly very interested in what exactly I had been paying for. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need to. Amanda did that for me. She called Mom. Mom called Dad. Dad called my aunt. My aunt called my cousin. By Saturday, I had apparently committed a family crime. The official accusation was that I had humiliated Amanda. Nobody mentioned the part where Amanda had publicly called me cheap. Nobody mentioned the $2,800 chandelier. Nobody mentioned the 3 years of rent. They talked about my reaction. That was the family pattern. The person who finally objected to the mistreatment became the problem. I recognized it immediately, and this time, I refused to participate. Mom called Sunday morning. Emily, your sister is devastated. I know. She feels like you don't love her. I closed my eyes. Mom. What? I paid her rent for 3 years. Silence. I know. No, I don't think you do. I know you've helped. Helped? I laughed softly. Mom, I've paid more than $120,000. What? There it was. The first crack. She hadn't known. Of course she hadn't. Amanda had never told them. I could hear Mom breathing. Emily. I didn't want recognition. I know. I didn't want praise. I know. But I am done being treated like the selfish one. Mom's voice softened. She didn't mean it. She meant it enough to say it in front of 32 people. She was drinking. So was everyone else. She was emotional. So was I. Another silence. Then Mom asked, Are you really going to send her a bill? I looked at my laptop. The document was open. No. Mom exhaled. Good. I'm going to send her an accounting. Her breathing stopped. What's the difference? One is a demand. And the other? The truth? Mom didn't answer. I ended the call. Then I sent Amanda the document. No explanation. No angry paragraph. No warning. Just the PDF. The title page contained one sentence. You asked me to take back what I gave you. I am respecting your request. For completeness, here is the record of what I gave you over the last 3 years. I attached the accounting. Then I put my phone face down. For exactly 11 minutes, nothing happened. Then it exploded. 3 missed calls, 6 texts, then another call, then another. I didn't answer. The final message read, Amanda, you are sick. I stared at it, and something inside me finally broke free. Not angrily, quietly. I realized I didn't care what she thought anymore. That was the revenge. Not the document. Not the chandelier. Not the money. The fact that her opinion no longer controlled my emotional state. But Amanda wasn't finished. Neither was the family. 2 days later, Daniel came to my apartment. He looked exhausted. He stood outside my door with his hands in his jacket pockets. Can we talk? I almost said no. Instead, I let him in. He sat on the edge of the sofa. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I didn't know it was that much. I nodded. I figured. I knew you paid the rent. I know. But I didn't know you paid all of it. I did. He looked down. How long? 3 years. He rubbed his face. I feel terrible. You should. He looked at me. I tried to get Amanda to stop. When? Last year. I didn't respond, he continued. She said you'd offered. I did. She said you didn't mind. I didn't complain. That isn't the same. I looked at him. No. He swallowed. I'm sorry. It was the first sincere apology I'd heard from anyone, and somehow it hurt more than Amanda's insults. Because Daniel finally understood. He understood that there was a person behind the payments. A person who had postponed her own life. A person who had watched money disappear month after month. A person who had convinced herself that helping family was simply what good people did. I told him he didn't owe me an apology. He shook his head. Yes, I do. Then he left. That night, I sat in the dark. I thought about the townhouse I'd wanted 3 years ago. I searched my old emails. The listing was still there. The property had been sold. I checked what it sold for. My stomach dropped. The price had increased by nearly $90,000. I stared at the screen. That was the opportunity cost. Not just the money I had handed Amanda. The life I could have built with it. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel angry. Really angry. I cried that night. Not because I regretted helping her. Because I regretted abandoning myself. And that distinction mattered. I couldn't get those 3 years back. But I could stop giving away the next 3. The following Monday, Amanda sent me an email. The subject line was, Your behavior. The email was exactly what I expected. She accused me of manipulation, of keeping score, of trying to embarrass her. She said the apartment payments were my choice. She said I had weaponized generosity. Then came the final paragraph. If you really want to be my sister, you'll apologize, return the wedding gift, and stop acting like I'm some kind of charity case. I read it twice. Then I replied. 3 sentences. I have no intention of humiliating you. I have no intention of controlling you. And from today forward, I will no longer financially support you. I sent it. Then I blocked her number. That was the moment everything changed. Because Amanda had spent her entire life assuming there was always another version of me waiting behind the current one. The version who would forgive, the version who would pay, the version who would explain, the version who would come back. She was about to discover that sometimes people don't become cruel. They simply become unavailable, And that is much harder to fight. 3 days later, I received a letter. Not from Amanda, from the property management company. The lease was coming up for renewal. The apartment was in Amanda and Daniel's names, but I was the person who had been paying the rent. The property manager wanted to know whether I intended to continue. I stared at the email, then I wrote, "No." One word, no explanation, no apology, no warning. The lease would expire in 30 days. Amanda had 30 days to find out what life looked like without me underneath it. And I had no idea what she would do when she realized the luxury apartment wasn't hers. It had simply been mine to fund. The first sign came the following Friday. Mom called. "Emily." "Yes?" "You need to reconsider." "About what?" "Amanda's apartment." I closed my eyes. "No. She can't afford it. That isn't my responsibility anymore. She says she'll lose everything." I looked around my apartment. At the books, the furniture, the life I had built. "Mom, I already lost 3 years." Silence. Then Mom whispered, "I didn't know." "I know." And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt sad. Because maybe that was the tragedy of the whole thing. My family hadn't realized how much I had been giving because I'd made giving look easy. I had hidden the cost so well that everyone believed there wasn't one. That night, I opened my financial accounts. For the first time in years, I looked at my savings without calculating how much I could spare for Amanda. I created a new account. I named it My Future. I transferred money into it. Then I sat there staring at the balance. It wasn't as high as it should have been, but it was mine, every dollar. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to keep it. I thought the story was ending there. It wasn't. Because 2 weeks before the lease expired, Amanda showed up at my office, and she wasn't alone. She had Mom with her. They were waiting in the lobby. Amanda saw me walk through the glass doors. She stood up. Her eyes were red. She looked furious. Mom looked frightened. Amanda walked toward me. "You need to fix this." I stopped. "No." She blinked. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." "You're destroying my marriage." "No, your finances are." "You're doing this because of one argument." "No." "Then why?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and finally said the sentence I had been too afraid to say my entire life. "Because I am not your emergency fund anymore." Her mouth opened. No words came out. I walked past her. But just before the elevator doors closed, Amanda shouted, "You'll regret this." I pressed the button. The doors closed. And as the elevator began descending, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering how to fix Amanda's problem. I was wondering what I wanted to do with my own life. And that question was terrifying, because once you stop living for everyone else, you finally have to decide who you are. And I was just beginning to find out. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. I stepped into the lobby, and for a few seconds I simply stood there. I could still hear Amanda's voice in my head. "You'll regret this." For years, those words would have worked. They would have made me stop, think, calculate, feel guilty, call her, offer something, anything. But this time, they didn't scare me. They made me tired. Deeply, completely tired. I walked outside into the afternoon sunlight. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Then it buzzed again, and again. I knew who it was. Amanda had discovered something I had known for a long time. She had never been angry because I was cruel. She was angry because I had become difficult to control. That distinction changed everything. I drove home and parked in my usual spot. For the first time in years, I didn't immediately open my banking app to see whether Amanda had another expense coming. I went upstairs, made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened a blank spreadsheet. At the top, I typed, "Emily Thorne, Financial Reset." I began with my own life, mortgage savings, retirement, emergency fund, travel, investments, things I had postponed, things I had told myself I couldn't afford. Then I looked at the final category: family assistance. I entered 0. I stared at it. Then I deleted the category. That tiny act felt more powerful than it should have. I wasn't promising never to help anyone again. I was promising myself that help would be a choice, not an obligation, not a reflex, not the price of being loved. The next morning, I received an email from Amanda. This time, she didn't insult me. She sounded scared. "Emily, please." I almost deleted it. Instead, I read the whole thing. She said Daniel had been trying to find a cheaper apartment. They couldn't qualify for anything comparable. Their credit was damaged. They had almost no savings. The luxury apartment would be gone in 3 weeks. Then came the sentence that made me pause. "I know I handled the wedding badly." I read it again. Not an apology, but closer than she'd ever come. I replied, "I hope you and Daniel find a place that works for you. Nothing else." She responded almost immediately. "That's it?" I typed. "Yes." She called. I didn't answer. Another email arrived. "You're really doing this?" I stared at those words. Then I realized something strange. She wasn't asking me to help. She was asking whether I had actually changed. She was testing the door. Would it open? I didn't open it. The next 3 weeks were messy. Daniel found a small 2-bedroom apartment. Amanda hated it. It was on the 4th floor. No concierge, no rooftop pool, no underground parking. The kitchen was smaller. The living room was half the size. And, according to Amanda, the neighborhood was embarrassing. She refused to move. Daniel eventually moved his things without her. That was the beginning of the end of their marriage. I didn't cause it, but I won't pretend I felt sorry for her when it happened, because I had watched Daniel carry more responsibility than he deserved for years. He had tolerated Amanda's spending. He had tolerated the apartment. He had tolerated her dependence on me. But when the money stopped, he finally had to confront what their life actually was. One evening, Daniel came to see me. He looked different. Not defeated. Older. Tired. "I moved out," he said. I nodded. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He sat down. "I should have done it sooner." I didn't argue. He looked at me. "She's telling everyone you ruined our marriage." I sighed. "I didn't." "I know." He looked at his hands. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "I believed her." I didn't answer. He continued. "She kept saying you liked helping, that you wanted to feel needed, that you would always be there." My chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "No," he said. "I'm the one who's sorry." He took a breath. "She told me the rent wasn't even that much to you." That sentence hurt. Not because it was false, because it explained everything. Amanda had reduced my sacrifice to a number that didn't matter, a payment that disappeared automatically. She hadn't seen me checking my account. She hadn't seen me postpone my own plans. She hadn't seen me sitting in my car after transferring thousands of dollars and wondering whether I was doing the right thing. She had only seen the apartment, the comfort, the result, never the cost. Daniel left an hour later. I thought that would be the end. Then something happened that I never expected. My father called. Dad had always been quiet. He wasn't like Mom. He didn't mediate. He avoided conflict. For most of my childhood, he had been the person who said, "Let your mother handle it." That evening, he said, "I owe you an apology." I didn't know what to say. He continued, "I knew you were helping them." "How much?" "Some of it." I closed my eyes. "How much did you know?" "That you paid the rent." I laughed bitterly. "And you never thought to ask whether I could afford it?" "I assumed you wanted to." I was silent. Then he said, "I was wrong." 3 words. Simple. But they landed heavily. Because I had spent years wishing someone would notice. Not praise me, not thank me, just notice. Dad finally had. I should have protected you, he said. I swallowed. You can't go back. I know. And I don't need you to. What do you need? I looked around my apartment. At the quiet. At the life that suddenly felt like it belonged to me again. I need everyone to stop expecting me to fix things. He breathed out slowly. Okay. That conversation didn't repair everything, but it changed something. For once, I wasn't standing alone. Then came the final confrontation. It happened at my parents' house. Mom had invited everyone for dinner. I almost didn't go. Then I decided I would. Not because I wanted to fight, because I was tired of avoiding rooms where my sister might be. When I arrived, Amanda was already there. She looked thinner, angrier. The charm was gone. She barely acknowledged me. Dinner started quietly. For 20 minutes, nobody mentioned anything. Then Amanda put down her fork. I think we need to talk. My stomach tightened. Mom looked at me. I said, about what? You know what? I really don't. The money. I looked at her. What about it? You sent me an invoice. No, I sent you an accounting. Same thing. No. She laughed. You actually think you're better than me? No. You keep pretending you're so innocent. I've never said that. You want everyone to know what you did? No. Then why document it? I looked directly at her. Because you called me cheap. She froze. I continued. You called me cheap in front of 32 people while standing in an apartment I'd paid for. Nobody moved. You told me to take back the gift. I did. I looked at Mom. Then I showed her what the gift had cost me over the years. Amanda shook her head. You weren't keeping track. I was. You never said anything. Because I didn't want to. Then you have no right to use it against me. I didn't use it against you. I leaned forward. I stopped using myself for you. Silence. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Amanda looked away. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But Amanda wasn't finished. You're destroying the family. No. You are. No, Amanda. I kept my voice calm. I'm simply refusing to be the person who absorbs everyone's consequences. She stared at me. Then she said, You're jealous. I almost smiled. Of what? My life. I looked around the table, then back at her. Your life cost me $123,847.62. Nobody breathed. Amanda's face went pale. You said you weren't keeping score. I wasn't. I paused. Until you called me cheap. That was the moment something shifted. Not because I had won, because everyone finally understood the scale. My aunt had been told I had helped. Mom had been told I had contributed. Daniel had been told the rent was manageable. But now there was a number. $123,847.62. A number big enough to silence everyone. Amanda looked at Mom. She's exaggerating. Mom shook her head. She showed me the records. Amanda looked at Dad. He said nothing. Then Amanda turned to me. You want the money? I shook my head. No. Then what do you want? I thought about that. For years, I had wanted recognition, an apology, a thank you, justice. But sitting there, I realized I wanted something simpler. Nothing. She frowned. What? I don't want anything from you. You're lying. No. I stood. I wanted a sister. Amanda's face changed. I continued. I wanted to be able to love you without wondering what it would cost me. My voice cracked. I wanted you to see me as your sister instead of your backup plan. She looked down. And when you called me cheap, I swallowed. That was the moment I realized you never saw me at all. Nobody spoke. I walked away from the table, I went outside. The air was cold. I stood on the porch and breathed. For the first time, I wasn't shaking. Then the front door opened. Amanda came outside. She stood several feet away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I didn't know." I looked at her. "What didn't you know?" "That it hurt you." I almost laughed. "How could you not know?" She looked down. "I thought you were okay." "That was the problem." She looked up. "You never told me." I nodded. "You're right." She seemed surprised. I continued. "I should have." Then I paused. "But you also should have noticed." She had no answer. We stood there in silence. Then she whispered, "Are we sisters?" The question broke something inside me. Because beneath all the money and anger and betrayal, she was still my sister. I loved her. That was the worst part. I always had. But love without boundaries becomes self-destruction. So I told her the truth. "Yes." Her eyes filled with tears. "But that doesn't mean I'll pay your bills." She nodded. "And it doesn't mean I'll let you insult me." Another nod. "And it doesn't mean I hate you." She looked at me. "I don't hate you either." That was as close to an apology as Amanda could manage. I didn't need more. Not that night. I went home afterward. I sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd created the accounting. The same table where I'd cried. The same table where I'd opened my first savings account years ago. I opened my banking app. My savings were still there. Not as much as they should have been, but enough. I opened a property website. And for the first time in 3 years, I started looking at homes again. Not for Amanda. Not for my parents. For me. A few months later, I found one. It wasn't enormous. It didn't have a rooftop pool. It didn't have a concierge. It didn't have marble floors. It had a little garden, a quiet kitchen, a spare bedroom, and sunlight in the morning. I put down a deposit. When I signed the paperwork, my hand shook. Not because I was afraid, because I finally understood what those 3 years had been. They weren't proof that I was stupid. They were proof that I had been capable of extraordinary generosity. The mistake wasn't loving my sister. The mistake was believing love required me to disappear. 6 months after the confrontation, Amanda and I barely spoke, not because of another fight, because distance was necessary. Daniel had moved into his own place. They eventually separated formally. Amanda found a job. It wasn't glamorous. She hated it. But she kept it. She moved into a smaller apartment. And for the first time, she started paying her own bills. I didn't celebrate. I didn't mock her. I didn't tell anyone. Because the point was never to destroy her. The point was to stop destroying myself. Then one Friday afternoon, I received an envelope. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. From Amanda. The first line was, "I owe you more than money." I sat down. The letter was 4 pages long. She admitted things I had never heard her admit. That she had become dependent on me. That she had convinced herself I enjoyed being needed. That she had resented me for being financially responsible. That sometimes she had intentionally minimized what I gave her because admitting the truth would have made her feel guilty. Then came the sentence that stayed with me. "When you took the chandelier back, I thought you were humiliating me. I didn't understand that you were finally listening to me." I stopped reading. She continued, "I told you I didn't want anything from you. You believed me. That was it. No dramatic apology, no demand, no request for money, just accountability." I finished the letter. Then I folded it. I didn't respond immediately. I waited 3 days. When I finally replied, I wrote, "Thank you for saying it. I hope you build a life you're proud of. I'll always be your sister. But I won't be your safety net." She replied, "I understand." And strangely enough, that was the end. Not the family, not the relationship. Just the old version of it. The version where Amanda took and I gave. A year later, something unexpected happened. My parents hosted Christmas dinner. Amanda arrived with a small gift for me. I opened it. It was a framed photograph. It was a picture of the two of us when we were children. We were sitting on the front steps of our childhood home. Amanda had one arm around me. I was missing a front tooth. We were both laughing. On the back, she had written, "Before money, before favors, before keeping score." I miss these girls. I stared at it for a long time. Then I hugged her. It wasn't a magical reconciliation. We weren't suddenly best friends. But something was different. There were boundaries. Real ones. She didn't ask for money. I didn't offer it. When she needed advice, she asked. When I couldn't help, she accepted it. And slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something. Something healthier. Something that didn't require one sister to disappear so the other could shine. As for the chandelier, I kept it. It hung in my new dining room. Every time sunlight hit the crystals, tiny reflections scattered across the walls. Friends would compliment it. I'd smile. Sometimes they'd ask where I got it. I always gave the same answer. It was a gift. And technically, that was true. But I knew the real story. That chandelier became the physical symbol of the moment I finally understood my worth. Not because it was expensive, because someone told me I was cheap while standing on the foundation of everything I had given them. And instead of arguing, I simply stopped giving. That's what surprised everyone. They expected revenge to be loud. They expected screaming, public humiliation, legal threats, maybe a dramatic family confrontation. Instead, my revenge was painfully boring. I kept my money. I reclaimed my gift. I documented the truth. I stopped paying. I bought my own home. I built my own life. And I let everyone else live with the consequences of theirs. The accounting document stayed on my computer. I never sent it to anyone else. I never posted it online. I never used it to embarrass Amanda. It wasn't a weapon. It was a boundary, a reminder, a record of what happens when generosity goes unrecognized for too long. Sometimes people ask me whether I regret helping my sister. I don't. I regret not stopping sooner. There's a difference. Because helping someone you love isn't weakness. But sacrificing your future so they can maintain their lifestyle isn't love, either. And I learned something else. People often think revenge is about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. I don't believe that anymore. The most satisfying revenge isn't always watching someone lose. Sometimes it's watching yourself stop losing. I didn't need Amanda to become poor. I didn't need her marriage to fail. I didn't need her to cry. I didn't need her to admit I was right. I needed to stop abandoning myself. That was the real victory. The woman who once sat at her kitchen table wondering whether she could afford another month of someone else's rent became the woman who finally looked at her own bank account and asked, "What do I want?" Not, "What does Amanda need?" Not, "What will Mom think?" Not, "How do I keep everyone happy?" Just, "What do I want?" And the answer was simple. I wanted a home, a peaceful life, a future, and the freedom to love people without financing their choices. I got all three. The last time Amanda ever mentioned the chandelier was almost 2 years later. We were having coffee. She looked at me and laughed. "Do you still have it?" "The chandelier?" "Yeah." I smiled. "Of course." She shook her head. "I still can't believe I told you to take it back." "I can." She looked at me. "Do you know what I think now?" "What?" "You didn't send me an invoice because you wanted the money." "No. You sent it because you wanted me to finally see the number." I nodded. She looked down at her coffee. "I did." Then she smiled. "I'm glad you did." I smiled back, and that was enough. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. Sometimes justice looks like balance. The person who gave too much finally gives less. The person who took too much finally learns to stand on their own. And the relationship that survives isn't the one built on obligation. It's the one that survives after obligation is gone. So if there's one thing I would tell anyone who recognizes themselves in my story, it's this. Don't confuse being needed with being loved. Don't confuse guilt with responsibility. And never let someone convince you that setting a boundary makes you selfish, because there will always be people who benefit from your lack of boundaries. They'll call you generous when you're useful. They'll call you difficult when you say no. They'll call you cheap when you stop paying. Let them. You don't have to prove your heart to people who only measure your value by what you provide. My sister once told me I was cheap. Maybe, in the end, she was right. I became very cheap with my time, very cheap with my money, very cheap with my energy. I stopped giving those things away to people who treated them like they were worthless, and I became very, very expensive to manipulate. That was the best gift I ever gave myself, and unlike the chandelier, I never took it back. Looking back now, I don't think the chandelier was ever the real issue. It was simply the moment everything became impossible to ignore. For 3 years, I had quietly paid my sister's rent. I had covered expenses, swallowed resentment, postponed my own plans, and convinced myself that keeping the peace was the same thing as keeping the family together. Then Amanda called me cheap, and somehow that insult gave me the clarity that all those years of sacrifice never had. I finally understood that generosity means very little when the person receiving it believes they're entitled to it. I didn't need to destroy my sister. I didn't need to ruin her life. I didn't even need her to pay me the $123,847.62. What I needed was to stop paying for a relationship that only worked when I was the one making sacrifices. And that was the part Amanda never expected. She thought taking back the wedding gift was revenge. It wasn't. The real revenge was that I finally kept what was mine: my money, my time, my future, my peace, and maybe most importantly, my ability to say no without feeling guilty. Today, Amanda and I have a relationship. It's different, healthier. There are boundaries now. She doesn't ask me to rescue her financially. I don't offer to rescue her. When we spend time together, we're sisters. Not creditor and debtor. Not provider and dependent. Just sisters. And honestly, that's worth far more to me than any amount of money, because sometimes the people closest to us don't realize how much we're carrying until we finally put it down. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's refusing to suffer for them anymore. So if you've ever been called selfish for protecting yourself, remember this. You are not selfish for having limits. You are not cruel for saying no. And you are not cheap because you finally decided your own future matters too. Sometimes the person everyone calls selfish is simply the person who finally stopped volunteering to be used. If this story made you think about someone in your own life who always expects you to give, sacrifice, or fix everything, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional family betrayal and satisfying revenge stories. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with screaming. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of a boundary, a bank statement, and one simple sentence. I'm not paying for this anymore.